Well, you come to a Conservative conference in Canada and you're going to find our friends from True North, especially one of the lead journalists, Andrew Lawton. If I'm not seeing you here in Ottawa at a Conservative conference, I'll see you in Davos covering the World Economic Forum. It's great to see you. What is this conference? It's called a networking conference. Who is here and what's it like?
Well, it's always been, billed as a place for the conservative movement, and they always emphasize historically lower C conservative case, and people can take from that what they will. But I think the most important aspect of this is that you're talking about a program that's driven by real people and not as much by politicians, and that's something that the president, Jamil Javani, has spoken about actually on my show, about how, yeah, obviously you've got party leaders and MPs and whatnot that are here, but they really should be listening to people, and I think that's true whether you're here in Ottawa or anywhere else in the country.
You know, I remember coming to these conferences about a decade ago. They were called the Manning Center. It's no longer called the Manning Center. Preston Manning, he's 80 now. He's focused on other things. You mentioned the new CEO, Jamil Javani. I think that's a healthy thing. And during the Harper years, this conference felt very official, very corporate. Tons of lobby groups were there to jockey to get in front of cabinet ministers. Maybe it's because the conservative movement is in the wilderness right now. It's more grassrootsy, more principled, and there's still some lobbyists here, but I think there's more ideas people than I've seen during the Harper years, for example. What do you think of that? That's my point of view. I don't know if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right. And I also think there's been a big shift in just the political landscape. I mean, one notable example back in those days was the level of corporate sponsorship here. You had all these big corporations, banks, and airlines that were throwing some money behind it. And obviously, I don't have access to any internal information. There are still some signs of corporate sponsorship, but corporations in general have gone so woke in the last few years, and in particular. And a lot of them do not want anything to do with conservatism. It's not that they don't want anything to do with politics. They don't want anything to do with conservative politics. And I think that really has reoriented people in the right of center movement, whether you're conservatives or libertarians, that you have to go it alone and you have to be okay being the outliers and outcasts of society. And that's an increasingly difficult proposition for people, but it's an important one.
You know, Rebel News, it's in our name. We're rebellious. We're outsiders. Although we always crave to be in the center of the news, it's sort of a contradiction. I feel comfortable amongst grassroots populists, and there's a trade show here. I just walked through it. You have the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom. You have vaccine skeptics. You have all sorts of groups that are true conservative. Maybe that kind of grassroots, rough and tumble conservative populism doesn't really fit with sponsored by Facebook, sponsored by Amazon. Actually, Facebook is one of the sponsors here. I don't know. I find it interesting. I'm glad to be here. I heard something on a panel this morning. One of the speakers, I forget his name, said he asked a bunch of conservative candidates to define what is a woman. You know, that Matt Walsh question. And it's an absurd question that any first grader could answer, but politically correct politicians, even who call themselves conservative, are afraid to say an adult female woman, you know. And I think that's part of it. I think the cancel culture, the being afraid of the mob, I think it is soaked even into conservative parties, certainly the last conservative leader. What do you think about that?
Well, it has. And I mean, you look at the last two conservative elections, and I think they show very interesting contrasts. In 2019, you had Andrew Scheer, who, despite being a pro-life social conservative, ran away from that position during the campaign. And then you have Erin O'Toole, who was everything that all of the moderates and the red Tories and the media and the liberals said a conservative leader should be. He was moderate. He was from the GTA. He was pro-choice. He didn't want to touch social issues. And he lost. He lost to Justin Trudeau yet again. So this idea that the conservatives can win by becoming like the liberals has been completely debunked, completely and utterly debunked. And I think that the 2021 election should be the death knell to that narrative that still permeates in some ways within conservative politics.
Now, I know you're here to do your own journalism. I saw some of your True North team, very exciting. I love the young guys you've got going. What's the best way for people to keep in touch with what you're up to. What's the best way for them to stay connected to Andrew Lawton?
Well, obviously, my work and my show at True North is a big vehicle for that. And I also have my own Substack, andrewlawton.substack.com. And like you, I have a bit of Twitter fever from time to time. So at Andrew Lawton on Twitter.
Well, it's great to see you here. The fact that you are here tells me this is a good place to be. Andrew Lawton, certainly one of the good guys. I'm going to go back into the conference now. It really is a kind of political reunion. There's people here from all across the country, and I'm glad to be here. Stay with us, more ahead. That was an excerpt from the Ezra Levant show. I'm Ezra Levant. Every weekday, I do a monologue about the topic of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest either in studio or via Skype. And then I read your mail, whether it's fan mail or hate mail, which is sometimes even more interesting. This is on our premium service, though, called Rebel News Plus. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. It's $8 a month or less if you buy a whole year in advance. You get my show every weeknight, plus Sheila Gunn Reid's show every week. It's called The Gun Show. It's pretty amazing. You know, we rely on you because we do not take a dime from the government. In Canada, that makes us almost unique. So please help us out and help yourself to some great journalism at rebelnewsplus.com.